Good morning. Today is December 7th, 2022. Pearl Harbor Day is the day that most of us, especially those of you tuning in, I'm sure you all are aware of that. Some of the younger generation may not be quite so aware of the importance of today and how today changed the lives of so many, not only in the United States, but in the world. And with that going on. So it's just a day that I always remember, I always think about for many different things that happened on this day in history. And I know that for people that go to Hawaii, one of the things that they do, one of the sites they want us to go to and see is Pearl Harbor, and the evidence of the devastation and everything that's still there yet, the history of the United States. Today, as we look at the Bible, the history of God's people, we look at Daniel chapters 5 through 7. And chapter 5 begins with King Belshazzar. So this is, he calls himself Nebuchadnezzar's son. There's some discrepancy about that maybe he was a grandson or something, but regardless, that doesn't really matter. But King Belshazzar is now in power, and Nebuchadnezzar is gone. And this new king makes a great feast, and he forgets the lessons that his predecessor, King Nebuchadnezzar had learned about God and about the power of God and the might of God and to worship God. And this new king takes a lot of the silver and the gold and the goblets and everything from the temple, the holy implements of the faith, and he uses them. They just drinking wine out of them and partying and forgetting the sacredness of these vessels. It says they drank the wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. All of these different gods that they praised and worshipped, forgetting about God in their worship. And as they were doing this, verse 5 says, immediately the fingers of a human hand appeared and began writing on the plaster of the wall of the royal palace. And the king watched as he wrote, and as the letters came, the king became terrified. He didn't know what it says. His face turned pale, his thoughts terrified him, his limbs gave way, and his knees knocked together. That's somebody that's experiencing extreme fright. And it kind of makes me wonder, did he realize then the sacrilege that they were doing, with using these holy cups and everything, for their feasting and their partying? Did he realize that, or did he remember maybe about the God that that the King Nebuchadnezzar had learned to revere and to hold holy? What kind of thoughts went through his head that scared him, terrified him so much? But the words he couldn't read. He didn't understand. He didn't know what they were. And he called again all of the wise men of Babylon. And whoever can read this and tell me will be clothed in purple. And of course, none of the wise men of Babylon could make any sense of it. And then verse 10, the queen, when she heard about this, came to the banquet hall. So, they're having this big feast and the queen isn't even there. Surprising. But, just one of those little minor points, that's told. And, she greets him, "O king, live forever." I could just, if my wife said something like that to me, I'd be suspicious of what's going on now. But this was a greeting for the king. "O king, live forever. Don't let your thoughts terrify you. There's a man in your kingdom." And she remembers. She knows about Daniel. And she has him bring a call for Daniel. And, there's a long, lengthy conversation there of some sort. And then verse 17, Daniel starts to respond. And, no, let your gifts be for yourself. I don't need this. And he goes on and he reminds this new king about the old king. And in verse 22, and you have not humbled your heart, even though you knew all of this. You have exalted yourself against the Lord of heaven. You have used the vessels of his temple. You have praised the gods of silver and gold. You know, so Daniel is pointing out, I mean, all of these things that this new king, and he says, in this God whose power is your very breath, to whom belong all of your ways, you have not honored. You have forgotten about the real God. And then he says, so from his presence the hand was sent with this writing, you know, and it's Mene Tekel Parson, or however you want to say them. And so, you know, God has numbered your days. And so, this one is written twice, M-E-N-E. It's written twice, so it's going to happen. Your days are numbered. And then Tekel, he says, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. You know, you've been judged. And, you know, you're not anywhere close to what you should be. And then the last word, up in one spot it's spelled P-A-R-S-I-N, and then in verse 28, then it's P-E-R-E-S. And, you know, there's a little deal that, so the P-E-R-E-S would be the singular of the word P-A-R-S-I-N, is what, you know, a footnote in my Bible says. So, I mean, because you wonder, well, why is the word changed? Well, plural, singular, you know, and we know how those things work. So your kingdom is divided and will be given to the Medes and to the Persians. And immediately with that translation, the king has Daniel dressed in purple and puts a chain of gold around him and ranks him third in the kingdom. And then this chapter ends with that very night, King Belshazzar was killed. And Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 62 years old. And then we're also going to find out about, so Darius was of the Medes, and I don't remember right now the name of the one from Persia that comes in, but they take over. And so this new king that, you know, of the different country, you know, and it's again a part of the fulfillment of an earlier prophecy to King Nebuchadnezzar and all of that as well. But Darius sets up his kingdom with 120 satraps, you know, people, overseers, they're watching, and Daniel is one of them. And Daniel distinguishes himself, and the king plans to appoint Daniel over the whole of the nation. And of course, these others are jealous. I mean, they want that position. Why should you give it to this foreigner? I mean, why should he be, you know? And so they plot, and they come to the king, you know, make a decree that anybody that worships you, if it worships anything other than you for the next 30 days, will be thrown to the lions, because they know that Daniel remains faithful to God and worships God. And, you know, his where he lives is in the upper room where he prays with the open window toward Jerusalem. You know, they can see him praying to God on a daily basis. So this is the plot against Daniel. We're going to get rid of this guy so that, you know, one of us can get this important position. So the king makes this decree, and then they report Daniel. And the king is not happy because, you know, Daniel has found his favor. And he wants to do anything to save Daniel. But it's the rule, it's the law that, you know, anything the king has decreed, you know, he can't make another decree saying, well, that one's false, you know. It's, you know, he's totally infallible. Anything he says, and, you know, it's got to happen. So he throws Daniel to the lions. And we know this is a great story. We know another one of those stories we learned in Sunday school, Daniel and the lion's den, and how God sends an angel to bind up the mouths of the lions, and the king comes in the morning. And I think this is just wonderful. The king comes in the morning. You know, he's been up all night worrying, fretting and fussing about Daniel. And I mean, is he praying to God? I mean, because he says to Daniel, may your God, whom you faithfully serve, deliver you. You know, may this God that you serve be the true God. May he deliver you. This is the king's prayer. And that happens. And he comes in the morning. O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you worship, whom you faithfully serve, been able to deliver you? And Daniel responds, O king, live forever. Kind of the same greeting, as his wife had. O king, may you live forever. That wasn't with this king, but that was the other, Belshazzar's wife said that. But, and he says, they would not hurt me because I was found blameless before him, God, and also blameless before you. I have done no wrong. And then the king threw all of those others to the lion's den, and they suffered the fate that they had wanted for Daniel. Then when we get to chapter 7, the last one we look at briefly today it's the first of Daniel's it's the first of Daniel's visions. And this goes back to King Nebuchadnezzar's, King Belshazzar's reign, actually. So this is previous to having been tossed in the lion's den by King Darius. But Daniel has a dream, and if you read through the dream, it's a kind of a frightful dream. It's some of the apocalyptic stuff, but the dream, the lion representing the Babylonian Empire, the bear the Medes Empire, which is right now, and the four-headed leopard is the Persian Empire, which, it was Medes and Persians that were, in charge, taking over then. And then the fourth beast, the dragon-like beast, is the Greek, represents the Greek kingdom that would be coming. And so, this is a kind of a vision of what's going to be coming. And, the vision that he has there. And, this chapter ends with, my face turned pale, but I kept the matter in my mind. Here my account ends. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts were terrified. So this vision even brought fear and terror and uncertainty to Daniel. But this is this is some of the only writing in the Old Testament that talks about, the apocalyptic. And I mentioned that in the introduction to this book. So that's enough again for today.